How do you feel when you
Hear the word self-discipline? Warm and fuzzy? Super confident and motivated? Not so much? If you're leaning toward not so much, I'm not surprised. And you're not alone. Far too many of us are stuck struggling with a toxic love-hate relationship with self-discipline. We want it because we know we need it in order to create a successful life. Yet we often don't believe we have enough of it, at least in some area of our life. And we're tired of beating the crap out of ourselves in order to get it. Or every time we fall short. We love the shiny positive results, but man, can the process of getting it, if we get it, really suck. I know, because all my life, I've struggled with self-discipline. Despite having been tested and labeled gifted at an early age, over and over again, my teachers noted on my report card, Elizabeth is not living up to her potential. It ate away at my confidence and my self-esteem. I began to resent my potential and see it as a burden because I wanted to do better. I wanted to be better. It wasn't until very recently that I learned all those years I'd been experiencing significant ADHD symptoms. Back then, all my little heart heard was I'm not enough. After high school, I took the so-called easy route and went to work for my father, even though I really wanted to go to college and study theater and psychology. At 21, I met my first serious boyfriend. By 23, we were married. I went straight from living with my parents to living with my husband without ever having the opportunity to be on my own and develop any real autonomy or sense of self. I had no clue who I was. In fact, I was suffering from what I now call the 3 Ps from hell. People-pleasing, perfectionism, peacemaking. That noxious cocktail is a surefire way to lose yourself. And lose myself I did. The next 3 decades were full of adventure. We lived and traveled all over the world, had 2 beautiful children that I homeschooled. I became quite the hostess. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. Behind closed doors, there was a lot of unhealthy, dysfunctional stuff going on. I did manage to develop some self-discipline. Unfortunately, it was always rooted in that perfectionism and people-pleasing. I was always way more focused on what everyone else wanted or what they might think, desperately jumping through hoops trying to achieve those external results in order to get the love and validation I felt like I needed in order to finally be enough. It was unsustainable. It bounced erratically back and forth between extreme, almost masochistic, and completely non-existent. Either way, the experience was always drenched in fear, shame, and punishment. It certainly wasn't helping me live my best life. It took being diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer at the age of 35 to finally pursue my dream of acting. That should have been a beautiful gift to myself. I turned it into a bloody battlefield. There was a reason I hadn't been pursuing it all those years. I was terrified of putting myself out there where I could be judged, rejected, found wanting once again. Still now, I was furious and disgusted with myself for having been such a wuss all of those years and almost dying with my dream still in me. So I bullied myself through that entire journey. What is wrong with you? What are you so afraid of? Just shut up, get out there and do it. No regard to how I was feeling or the stress it was putting on my body, which was extreme. I had a physical therapist seriously tell me that she felt like she was working on a shock patient. And that was me on a good day. Don't get me wrong, I am so glad that I went for it because it eventually led to a lot of joy and, yes, even success. But the journey getting there, it didn't have to be like that. After 31 years, I finally had the courage to end my toxic marriage. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. There I was in my 50s, on my own, for the very first time. No alimony, no degree, no real job experience. The fear was paralyzing. To say I was struggling would be an understatement. And then I received a powerful message. Discipline will give you a beautiful life. Sounded simple enough, almost a throwaway, yet something about it kept gnawing at me. It was that word beautiful. See, I could believe that discipline might give me financial or business success, maybe even that elusive, perfect body that I was always chasing after, but a beautiful life? No. By now, I had enough experience with discipline to know that beautiful was never a part of the equation. To me, a beautiful life meant something so much more than external results. It went way deeper than that. It was a feeling, a state of being, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I knew I wanted it. I craved that beautiful life, and I set out on a quest to discover what that was and how it could be possible. I started by looking up the word discipline, because looking up words always gives me clarity and insight, and sure enough, I caught an eyeful that might explain why we have so much resistance. Lots of words like rules, obey, control, fix, force, even punish. In fact, Merriam-Webster says that discipline is to punish or penalize for the sake of enforcing obedience or perfecting moral character. Yikes. Nothing beautiful about that. However, when I dug a little deeper, I discovered that the root of discipline comes from the Latin word discipulus, which means to learn, to study. Makes sense now why disciple means student, but that is not how I had ever approached discipline. As a student on a journey to learn, study, and grow? Not even close. And disciple made me think of the Bible, especially the apostles, because they were supposedly Christ's most devoted students and followers. And that word devoted really stood out to me, because it evokes such feelings of love, honor, respect, commitment. What would that be like on a self-discipline journey? So, of course, I had to look up devoted as well. And I learned that devoted means to allocate a large amount of time, energy, and resources toward a person, activities, or a cause. And right away, I saw how all three of those things fit perfectly into a self-disciplined journey of learning. First and foremost, I was crystal clear that the person I needed to be devoted to was me. I was the one that I needed to study, get to know, and eventually come to master. I still had no clue who I was. My relationship with myself was anything but loving and nurturing. It was downright toxic. No wonder my relationship with self-discipline was toxic as well. Deep down, all I've ever really wanted was to be okay with who I was and to fall in love with who I was becoming. I had to figure out a way to connect with and believe in my higher best self and all of that magnificent, untapped potential that is just as valid a part of who I am as all the rest. In fact, I would argue that our potential is the biggest, most important part of who we are. Yet, most of us don't live that way. The activities I needed to be devoted to were any activities that were part of that wondrous journey of self-discovery, self-expansion, self-actualization, self-mastery, and the cause. I'm a firm believer that when we live from our highest self, from and into our magnificent potential, we naturally make the unique positive impact that we came here to make. And we feel really good when we're doing it too. Can you imagine how beautiful our lives could be? How beautiful the world could be if all of us were living from that place? What greater cause is there than that? I was beginning to see that discipline could indeed give me a beautiful life. However, it wasn't enough to intellectually understand this new approach, not when my contrary conditioning, beliefs, and habits ran so deep. It takes a lot of practice to embody change. It takes being a devoted student, consistently showing up to class, day after day, ready and willing to learn. What was getting in the way of me doing that? Dr. Carol Dweck's research on the fixed versus growth mindset proves the impactful difference these two very different mindsets have on our ability to learn and grow, as well as our level of success and emotional well-being. The fixed mindset equates our talents, abilities, and attributes with our identity and self-worth, and believes that they are fixed and finite. Ultimately, not enough. Thus, with a fixed mindset, we shy away from challenges that otherwise might have helped us stretch and grow, and wind up devoting all of our time, energy, and resources toward protecting our ego and not exposing our not enoughness. That sounded awfully familiar to me. The growth mindset, on the other hand, believes that our talents, abilities, and attributes can be developed. We can learn whatever we need in order to achieve and become what we want. Where we are now is simply a jumping off point. Thus, challenges and even failures are simply opportunities to learn and grow. And we don't have to like where we're at right now either. This isn't about positive thinking or living in denial. It is okay to have a gap between where we are and where we want to be, when we can embrace that gap as an opportunity to become more. And the good news is, a growth mindset can be learned. This new learning approach to self-discipline, where we are both a devoted student and the subject, is all about honoring, believing, and tapping into our infinite potential, and embracing the journey of becoming. It's about fully knowing, understanding, and evolving ourselves from a place of curiosity, not shame and excessive criticism. This journey requires a lot of self-reflection, which requires a safe environment. It's scary to look at the darker, less than pretty parts of ourselves in order to change. Cultivating curiosity towards self is crucial and takes an enormous amount of courage and knowing our innate value, worthiness, and goodness. Shame destroys that curiosity. More than anything else, we need to abolish shame. Here's the thing. This is important. Many, if not most of us, have been conditioned to discipline ourselves through the use of shame, excessive criticism, and punishment, all of which have been shown to cause serious damage to our brains, our psyche, and our relationship with self. According to Brené Brown, guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Shame is a brutal attack on our core identity. And yet, our brains are hardwired to have us behave in congruence with our beliefs, especially our beliefs around who we are. When we repeatedly tell ourselves, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, something is inherently wrong with us, we might be able to force ourselves to behave temporarily. But ultimately, eventually, we will revert back to behaving in alignment with those underlying limiting beliefs. And shame is extremely painful, which drives us to soothe. Usually with the exact same numbing, distracting behaviors most of us are trying to overcome through our discipline in the first place, which only leads to more shame. And the cycle continues. Shame will never give us a beautiful life. I set out to discover what a beautiful life could be, and discovered that self-discipline is the ultimate expression of self-love. I'd just been doing it all wrong. And the changes don't happen overnight. This is a journey, a beautiful, never-ending journey, when we embrace it as a gift of love and devotion to ourselves and to our magnificent potential. This is the essence of who we are. This is what it means to be fully alive. We are meant to live a beautiful life. Let's all go out there and live it.